Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder as I step off the train and deliver an episode to you while I walk home. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good evening, listeners. It's a lovely, chilly night here in suburban Chicago. The air is crisp and cool, but not outrageously cold. I'd say it's in the 40s. I've got my hat on, but gloves off. And I'm enjoying my stroll to chat with you. Well, I said that Friday would be the third day of movie week, and then I got busy and didn't get an episode recorded on Friday. So it is Monday. It is the third movie episode to round out movie week from last week. And it's a little bit of a surprise. So I try to do one movie episode a month. And this month I was going to do 3. The September ones, the October horror movies, and then the October regular movies. Well, it turns out I only watched one movie I want to talk about from October that wasn't a horror movie. However, I watched 2 at the beginning of November that I think are worth talking about. So what we're going to do is talk about 3 movies from October and the beginning of November, and then I could do one more movie episode toward the end of December or the late in the run in December to talk about any other movies I want to talk about for the rest of the year. That's what I'm going to do. And since I get to make up what I want to do on the show, it works. Haha. So the 3 movies, I have 3 movies I want to talk about today, and some games to go with them if you decide to make it a movie and a game type situation. The first movie I want to talk about is The Outfit. The Outfit was a really compelling drama about a tailor in mob-era Chicago. So, I think it's 1920s bootleg Chicago, or it could be. Maybe it's the 1950s. It might be 1950s era Chicago. I thought it was the 20s, but either way, he's a tailor, and his shop is being used as a drop-off point by one of the local mafia gangs. He knows that that's what they do, but basically they have a box in the back and they bring stuff in and put it in the box, and then people come in and pick stuff up in the box, and he never interacts with the box. He doesn't ever interfere with them. It's a place they use, and we presume in watching this film that he was forced to do that in order to stay in business, a sort of protection racket or whatever. Well, something bad happens, and a cascade of difficult choices spirals out of control, and people get in trouble. It feels a lot like a Coen Brothers movie in a variety of ways. It's also got an excellent bottle narrative. The whole thing takes place in the tailor shop, which makes for a really nice contained story, but also would make an excellent play. I don't know if this was a play first, but it absolutely could be. In fact, it'd be hard to think it wasn't a play, given how it was written. Yeah, so if you get a chance to watch The Outfit, highly recommend it. I mean, there is a little bit of violence, but nothing too outrageous, I don't think, and really compelling. So, that's The Outfit, a movie about being a sort of bystander in a gangland war world. Now, I'm not sure what game would fit that theme very well. There are, of course, games about being a tailor. There is, of course, the famous game from Ignacy Trzewiczek of Portal Games, Pret-a-Porter, which is about running a high-end fashion house and how easy it is to go out of business with that. There are also, of course, games about the mafia. The Godfather Corleone's Empire is one that is pretty well reviewed. There's also Chinatown, I guess. I don't have a lot of mafia games myself, but there are a number of them. Like I said, The Godfather Corleone's Empire seems to be the one I hear most people talk about. So that would be, if you wanted one that's about being a tailor, you could go Pret-a-Porter. If you wanted one that's about being in the mafia, you could go The Godfather Corleone's Empire. As to being a regular citizen, watching the outrages of the world pass you by, I guess you could, on a tangent, do This War of Mine, which is about being a non-combatant in a war-torn city and trying to survive through the heartache of the experience. That does not feel exactly what this is like, though. In some ways, you could go back to the original folk game that started the social deduction craze, and that's Mafia. In Mafia, you play a group of townspeople who are being menaced by the titular mafia. One of the people in the group is secretly a mafia assassin and is murdering members of the town, and you need to stop him before he murders everybody. It is, like I said, it's the classic game that eventually became Werewolf and then spawned a variety of different professional caliber social deduction games in the same vein as some of those other games. So I would say that would be your accompaniment to the outfit. The second movie I want to talk about is a delightful family romp, and this is Enola Holmes 2. Enola Holmes is, of course, the Netflix series starring Millie Bobby Brown, in which she plays the rambunctious feminist sister of older brothers Sherlock and Mycroft Holmes. In the first one, Enola sets off on an adventure and sort of sets herself up as Sherlock's ward, but basically living on her own. In the second one, she is established in London and she takes a mysterious case. I actually like the second one at least as much as the first one, if not maybe a little more. Because the character was established, we don't have to spend so much time on kind of figuring out how she gets to be the way she is. We get to focus more on the mystery. There wasn't quite as much of the talking to the camera stuff as in the first movie, which I thought we were all better off for the difference there. Overall, I really did like Enola Holmes 2. I also do like Henry Cavill as Sherlock Holmes and would love to see us have a Henry Cavill Sherlock Holmes movie. I don't know that that'll happen though, because he really should play second fiddle to Enola Holmes in the Enola Holmes series. There are a number of ways that you could pursue an Enola Holmes style story as a board game. Of course, I always suggest the old standby Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, which could very easily, you could just play it rethemed as Enola Holmes. Holmes has given you a challenge, a mystery to solve, and you have to race around and try to solve it faster than he did. There's also Watson and Holmes, which is a competitive Sherlock Holmes game, which fits the sibling rivalry that's at the heart of the Enola Holmes-averse, if I'm going to use a really kind of frankly disturbing term like that. And then ultimately, I think you might be best off pursuing Victoriana as your adventure game. So Victoriana is a cooperative game in which you play a variety of Victorian literary figures fighting crime in London. The crime is also from literary sources, so it has a kind of fantastical or silly arc to it. And the overall flow of the story is adventure. So you're fighting off minions and you're trying to find out who Moriarty is and what they're doing. And the game has a little bit of a pandemic to it in terms of managing drama. It's got a little bit of pushing your luck, trying to get the right resources to solve problems. And it's got an escalation mechanism that works really well. It's very difficult. I think we won it once and we've played it 3 or 4 times. That's Victoriana, and the game that I would suggest as the best accompaniment to Millie Bobby Brown's Enola Holmes 2. Finally, the third movie I want to talk about today is also one I watched in early November. This was Weird, the Al Yankovic story. Now, this movie, if you aren't familiar with it, why not? What are you doing with yourself? That's okay. Weird Al, of course, is the famous parodist who is known for playing the accordion very well and writing really catchy parody songs of popular tunes. In Weird, the Al Yankovic story, Daniel Radcliffe of Harry Potter fame plays Al as he grows up playing the accordion and strives to make his way as a music parody writer. There are beats that are somewhat truthful, but broad swaths of the story are outrageously comical and hilarious parodies of the music biopic. As one reviewer put it, and I'm stealing this line, it's much closer to Walk Hard than to Walk the Line. If you don't know those films, Walk the Line is a Johnny Cash movie, a movie about Johnny Cash. Walk Hard is the movie starring the guy who plays Steve Brule, John C. Reilly, as basically Johnny Cash, but it's not actually Johnny Cash. He's like a Johnny Cash knockoff, but it's a parody. And that's what's going on with Weird, the Al Yankovic movie. It's a parody of music stories, and then it wraps around on itself because Weird Al is in fact a real musician, and he actually has a small part in the movie as a record producer. So there's this great Ouroboros of parody and reality circling around. Daniel Radcliffe does an excellent job playing an out-of-control musician on the verge of breakdown, really sells it. So overall, Weird, the Al Yankovic story is dang entertaining. Even if it does, I think it's a little bit long, it's still quite funny. So the question is, what game can you play with Weird, the Al Yankovic story? There are a number of music-themed games you could play on tour, which is a roll and write about touring around the country in a band. That doesn't really feel all that on brand, though. Ironically, the game that feels most apt to play in the context of this movie is in fact a game that's almost a parody or a game version of another movie, which is The Networks. Now, The Networks is a game about running a crummy little TV station and trying to get whatever meager ratings you can in the context of other more popular networks. You put on these dumb shows and you hire these second-rate actors, and slowly over time you gain more and more viewership, and your goal is to sort of accumulate the most money and viewership over the course of the game. The humor in the game is very silly, and there's a lot of oblique and direct references to UHF built into the game. So if I was going to play a game that feels connected to Weird Al Yankovic, it feels like it really should be The Networks. But in that case then, maybe instead of watching Weird, you should be watching UHF, which is in its own right a pretty dang funny movie. I think UHF is almost, I'm going to say almost here, funnier than Weird. Because I never really feel bored with UHF, whereas Weird gets a little bit long toward the second half of the movie. That said, it was quite a delight to watch, and I enjoy it quite a bit. So I'm going to say The Networks is an ideal pairing to watch along with Weird. So there were a number of horror movies that I didn't really get a chance to talk about last time. I'm not going to dive back into that list now. But please do go check out that episode if you haven't, and check out the show notes link to my October horror list. It's quite extensive and quite entertaining. I'm just about to start my zombie movie marathon, which I do from mid-November through January when I teach my zombie class. I like to get caught up on zombie movies I haven't seen as a way of preparing to teach the class. I'm also thinking about how to reorder the class or reorganize the class a little bit to show some different movies. I'm still thinking through some of that and what it would look like and how it would work, but it seems worthwhile to me. It occurred to me as I was working on this back-to-back-to-back movie episode series that I don't really have any games about movie making. There is The Networks, which is probably the closest, and I know there are a couple more games about that. I actually have a worker placement game I've been working on for some time about the early days of cinema. Last time I tinkered with it, it was okay, but didn't feel like I'd figured out any sort of special sauce with it yet. And it's been moldering on the in progress shelf for a while now. Every now and again I keep thinking I might get it back out, but then I have not. Well, if you enjoyed this, I would love to hear your thoughts on movies that you've been watching. You could do that by heading over to Board Game Geek Guild 3269 and sharing your thoughts on film, either in September, October, or November. If you wanted to reach out to me directly, you can send me an email at brendan@rattleboxgames or a direct message on BoardGameGeek. Wombat929 is my username there. I'm also on Boîte à Jeux and Board Game Arena with similar usernames. And don't forget yukata.de. Well, that's just about it. It's chilly. I can see my house from here, and it feels like it's time to call it a night. I want to say thanks for joining me on my walk today. I hope that your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.